The dust from the cattle drive had barely settled when Colton Hayes saw her standing on the porch of the boarding house, her black dress stark against the weathered wood. 3 years had passed since he'd last laid eyes on Margaret Rose Sullivan. But she still had the power to stop his heart with just one look. She was a widow now, he'd heard tell from the other cowboys. Her husband had died in a mining accident up in Colorado, leaving her to make her way back to Cedar Ridge alone. The knowledge should have filled him with sympathy, but all Colton could feel was the familiar ache of wanting something he could never have. Margaret's green eyes found his across the dusty main street, and for a moment time seemed to stand still. Then she turned and walked back into the boarding house, her spine straight as a rifle barrel, leaving Colton standing there like a fool with his hat in his hands and his heart hammering against his ribs. "Well, I'll be damned," muttered his trail boss, Hank Morrison, following Colton's gaze. "Ain't that the Sullivan girl? Heard she married some mining fellow a few years back." "She did." Colton's voice came out rougher than he intended. He cleared his throat and settled his hat back on his head. "Reckon I'll go get cleaned up." But instead of heading to the bathhouse, Colton found himself walking toward the boarding house like a man drawn to his own hanging. His boots echoed on the wooden steps as he climbed to the porch, each step bringing back memories he'd tried so hard to bury. The door to the boarding house opened before he could knock, and there she was, Margaret Rose, close enough to touch. Close enough that he could smell the faint scent of lavender that had always been hers. It's alone. Colton. His name on her lips was barely a whisper, but it hit him like a physical blow. Maggie. He'd always called her that. Back when they were young and foolish and thought love could conquer anything. "I heard about Thomas." "I'm sorry." She nodded, her hands clasped so tightly in front of her that her knuckles were white. "Thank you." It was ... sudden. They stood there in awkward silence. Years of unspoken words hanging between them like a wall neither could cross. Finally, Margaret stepped aside. "Would you like some coffee?" I'd like that." The words tumbled out before he could stop them. The boarding house. Parlor was small and simple, furnished with mismatched chairs and a table that had seen better days. Margaret moved with quiet efficiency, pouring coffee from a battered pot. Her movements graceful, despite the obvious weariness in her shoulders. "You look good." "Colton." She handed him a cup, careful not to let their fingers touch. "The cowboy life suits you." He studied her face, noting the new lines around her eyes, the way her full lips seemed perpetually pressed into a thin line. She was still beautiful, more beautiful than any woman had a right to be, but there was a sadness about her now that cut him to the bone. "And you look tired," he said honestly. "When's the last time you slept?" Margaret's laugh held no humor. "Sleep is a luxury I can't afford these days. Thomas left behind ... debts. Substantial ones. The mine wasn't as profitable as he'd led people to believe." Colton felt a familiar surge of protective anger. Even in death, Thomas Sullivan was causing her pain. "How substantial?" "Substantial enough that I had to sell everything just to pay for his burial and make it back here." Margaret sank into the chair across from him, suddenly looking every one of her 28 years. "I'm working at the boarding house now, helping Mrs. Patterson with the cooking and cleaning in exchange for room and board." The thought of Margaret, who had been raised in one of the finest houses in Cedar Ridge, reduced to working as a serving girl maid. Colton's hands clenched into fists. "There's got to be something I can do." "No." Her voice was sharp, final. "I won't take charity, Colton. Not from you. Not from anyone." He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "It wouldn't be charity, Maggie. You know that?" Something flickered in her eyes, pain, longing, regret, but she looked away before he could be sure. "Don't. Please don't. Don't." "What? Don't care about you? Don't remember what we had?" Colton's voice dropped to a rough whisper. "Don't remember the night before you married him, when you came to me crying because you didn't want to go through with it?" Margaret's breath hitched, and when she looked at him again, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. That was a mistake. Was it? He stood up slowly, moving around the table until he was close enough to see the pulse beating frantically in her throat. "Because I remember every second of that night, Maggie. I remember the way you felt in my arms, The way you whispered my name like a prayer. She shot to her feet, putting distance between them. Stop it. Thomas is dead. Whatever happened between us is in the past. Is it? Colton moved closer, backing her against the wall. Then why are you trembling? Why can't you look me in the eyes? Margaret's hands came up to press against his chest, but she didn't push him away. Because I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago, Colton. Thomas. He changed me. The things he did, the way he treated me. She shuddered, the words trailing off. Cold fury washed over Colton like a winter storm. Did he hurt you? Not the way you're thinking. Margaret's voice was barely audible. Thomas was ... particular. He had certain expectations of a wife. And when I couldn't meet them, when I couldn't be what he wanted me to be, he made sure I knew exactly how inadequate I was. Colton's hands clenched at his sides. If Thomas Sullivan hadn't already been dead, Colton would have killed him with his bare hands. Maggie, he used to tell me I was cold, she continued, her eyes fixed on some point past his shoulder. Unnatural. Said it was no wonder you didn't fight for me when my father arranged our marriage. Said any real man would have taken one look at me and known. I wasn't worth the trouble. The words hit Colton like physical blows. He reached for her, but she stepped away, wrapping her arms around herself like armor. That's why we can't. She took a shaky breath. I'm not the girl you remember, Colton. I'm broken now, used up. I have nothing left to give anyone. Colton stared at her, his heart breaking for the vibrant, passionate woman who had been slowly destroyed by a man who didn't deserve to breathe the same air as her. You think I care about any of that? You should. Margaret's laugh was bitter. Any sensible man would. Then I guess I'm not sensible. Colton moved closer, slowly this time, giving her every chance to pull away. When she didn't, he reached up to cup her face in his calloused hands. I'd trade 10 herds for one night inside you, Maggie. Not because I want to use you or take something from you, but because I want to love you the way you deserve to be loved. The way I should have loved you 3 years ago. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and Colton caught them with his thumbs. I can't, she whispered. I don't know how anymore. Then let me teach you. His lips brushed her forehead, soft as a prayer. Let me show you what love is supposed to feel like. For a moment, Margaret melted against him. Colton thought he might have finally broken through the walls Thomas Sullivan had built around her heart. Then voices echoed from the front of the boarding house, and she pulled away, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Mrs. Patterson will be looking for me, she said, her voice carefully composed. I should go. Colton watched her walk away, knowing he was losing her all over again. But this time, he wasn't going to let her go without a fight. Over the next few days, Colton found excuses to visit the boarding house. He lingered over meals, struck up conversations with Mrs. Patterson, and generally made himself a fixture in Margaret's daily routine. He could see her growing more agitated with each encounter, but he also saw moments when her guard slipped, when she would smile at something he said, or when their eyes would meet across the dining room and he would see a flash of the old Maggie in her gaze. It was on the 4th, the night that everything changed. Colton was sitting on the porch of the boarding house, ostensibly enjoying the cool evening air, but really hoping to catch a glimpse of Margaret. When she emerged from the kitchen door, she moved like a ghost in the moonlight, her bare feet silent on the wooden steps. Couldn't sleep? He asked quietly. She jumped, her hand flying to her throat. Colton, you scared me? Sorry. He patted the space beside him on the porch swing. Want to sit for a while? Margaret hesitated, then settled beside him, careful to keep space between them. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, listening to the night sounds of the town settling down to sleep. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd fought for you? Colton asked suddenly. Margaret's hands tightened in her lap. Every day for the first year? Then I stopped letting myself wonder. I should have. His voice was heavy with regret. I should have stood up to your father. Should have demanded you choose for yourself instead of letting him bully you into that. Marriage. You were 23 years old with nothing but a horse and the clothes on your back, Margaret said softly. My father owned half the county. What could you have done? I could have tried. Colton turned to face her fully. I could have given you the choice instead of assuming you'd be better off with a man who could provide for you. Margaret was quiet for so long that Colton thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I wanted you to fight for me. I waited and waited for you to come storming up to the house, demanding that my father call off the engagement. When you didn't, you thought I didn't love you enough. I thought you didn't love me at all. The admission hung between them like a physical presence. Colton reached for her hand, relieved when she didn't pull away. I loved you so much it nearly killed me to let you go, he said. But I thought E was so sure that you deserved better than a drifting cowboy with no prospects and no future to offer. All I ever wanted was you. Margaret's voice broke on the words. Just you, Colton. I didn't care about money or security or what people would think. I just wanted to be with you. Colton brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. I know that now. But I was young and proud and too stupid to see what was right in front of me. We both made mistakes. Margaret turned on the swing to face him, her green eyes luminous in the moonlight. But that doesn't change where we are now. I'm still broken, Colton. Thomas saw to that. You're not broken. Colton's voice was fierce with conviction. You're wounded, and that's not the same thing. Wounds can heal, Maggie, but only if you let them. She studied his face for a long moment, as if trying to read his soul. What are you asking of me? I'm asking you to give us a chance. A real chance this time. Colton lifted his free hand to stroke her cheek. I'm asking you to let me love you the way you deserve to be loved. Margaret closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. I'm scared. So am I. The admission surprised him with its honesty. But I'm more scared of losing you again than I am of anything else. When Margaret opened her eyes, they were bright with tears and something else, something that looked like hope. If we do this, if we try again, I need you to know that I'm not the same person I was. Thomas changed me in ways I'm still discovering. I might never be whole again. Colton leaned forward until his forehead touched hers. Then we'll figure it out together. We'll take it slow. Take it easy. Whatever you need, whatever it takes. And if it's not enough, if I can't be what you remember, then I'll love who you are now. Colton's lips brushed hers, feather-light and full of promise. I'll love every version of you, Maggie Rose. The girl you were, the woman you've become, and whoever you're still becoming. The kiss that followed was tentative at first, hesitant and searching. But as Margaret melted against him, as her arms came up to twine around his neck, it deepened into something that spoke of years of longing and loss finally finding their way home. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Margaret rested her head against his shoulder. I don't know if I remember how to do this. We'll figure it out. Colton's arms tightened around her. We've got nothing but time. But time, as it turned out, was a luxury they didn't have. The next morning brought news that sent shockwaves through the small town. A telegram had arrived for Margaret. Mrs. Patterson's face was grave as she handed it over. Margaret's hand shook as she read the contents, her face going white as fresh snow. The telegram fluttered to the floor, and Colton was there to catch her as she swayed. What is it? He demanded, scooping up the fallen paper. The words hit him like a physical blow. Thomas Sullivan hadn't died in a mining accident as everyone believed. He'd been murdered, shot in the back, by men he owed money to. And now those same men were coming for Margaret, demanding she pay her dead husband's debts or face the consequences. They're coming here, Margaret whispered, her voice hollow with despair. They'll be here within the week. Colton crumpled the telegram in his fist, his mind racing. The amount mentioned was staggering more money than most people saw in a lifetime. There was no way Margaret could pay it, which meant, ... I have to run, she said, reading his thoughts. I have to leave tonight before they get here. Like hell you do. Colton's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. I won't let anyone hurt you, Maggie. Not again. You can't stop them, Colton. These aren't just angry creditors. They're killers. They murdered Thomas in cold blood. And they won't hesitate to do the same to me. Then we'll face them together. Margaret shook her head frantically. No, I won't let you get hurt because of Thomas's mistakes. I won't let you die for me. And I won't let you run for the rest of your life. Colton caught her hands, holding them steady. There has to be another way. But deep down, he knew there wasn't. The kind of men who killed for money weren't the type to negotiate or show mercy. They would come for Margaret. And they wouldn't stop until they had satisfaction in blood, if not in coin. The next few days passed in a blur of desperate planning and tearful conversations. Colton tried everything he could think of, wiring friends in other towns for loans, approaching the bank, even considering selling his small herd of cattle. But the amount was simply too large, and time was running out. It was on the 5th night, as Margaret prepared to slip away under cover of darkness, that Colton made his choice. "I'm coming with you," he announced. Appearing in her room as she packed her few belongings, Margaret spun around, her eyes wide. "Absolutely not. I won't let you throw your life away for me. My life isn't worth living without you in it." Colton moved to the window. "I should have said that 3 years ago. I should have followed you to Colorado and fought for you then, Colton." "No. Let me finish." He turned back to her, his gray eyes blazing with determination. "I let you go once because I thought it was the right thing to do. I spent 3 years regretting that decision. 3 years wondering what if. I'm not making that mistake again." Margaret's composure cracked, tears streaming down her face. "You don't understand what you're asking for. We'll be running for the rest of our lives, always looking over our shoulders, never able to settle down or have a normal life. I don't care about." "Normal." Colton crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. "All I care about is you. As long as we're together, we can face anything." She buried her face against his chest, her whole body shaking with the force of her tears. "I love you so much it terrifies me. I love you too." Colton pressed his lips to the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of lavender. "That's why we're going to make it through this. Love like ours doesn't come along every day, Maggie. We'd be fools to let it slip away again." They left Cedar Ridge that night, riding hard toward the horizon under a canopy of stars. Behind them lay everything they'd ever known. Friends, family, the life they'd planned to build together. Ahead lay uncertainty and danger, but also freedom and the chance to finally be together as the miles passed beneath their horses' hooves. Margaret began to relax for the first time in years. The weight of Thomas's expectations, the crushing burden of his debts, the fear that had ruled her life for so long, all of it fell away like chains finally broken. "Where are we going?" she asked as they stopped to water their horses at a small stream. Colton studied the map he'd brought, tracing their route with one finger. "California, maybe, or Oregon. Somewhere far enough away that they'll never think to look for us. And then what?" He looked up at her, a slow smile spreading across his weathered features. "Then we start over. We build the life we should have had 3 years ago." Margaret moved closer to him, her hand finding his. "It won't be easy. The best things never are." Colton lifted their joined hands to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "But we'll have each other, and that's enough for me." They traveled for weeks, always moving, always watching for signs of pursuit. Gradually, they began to breathe easier, to believe they might actually have escaped the shadows of the past. In a small town in Oregon, Colton found work on a ranch while Margaret helped the owner's wife with the household duties. It was there, under the endless western sky, they were finally married, a simple ceremony, with just the rancher and his wife as witnesses. Margaret wore a dress of pale blue instead of white, symbolizing the new beginning they were creating together. Their wedding night was tender and patient, filled with whispered promises and gentle touches as Colton slowly helped Margaret remember what it felt like to be cherished instead of used. He was true to his word, taking things at her pace, never pushing, never demanding more than she was ready to give. "I never thought I could feel this way again," Margaret whispered against his shoulder as they lay entwined in the moonlight streaming through their small cabin window. "What way?" Colton's fingers traced lazy patterns on her bare skin. "Safe, loved, like I matter to someone." Colton rolled over to look at her, his gray eyes serious in the pale light. "You matter to me more than anything else in this world, Maggie. You always have." She reached up to trace the line of his jaw, marveling at the way he leaned into her touch like a man starved for affection. "We're really going to make it, aren't we? We're going to have our happy ending after all." "We already have it," Colton said, lowering his head to kiss her softly. "This right here, right now, this is our happy ending. Everything else is just details." And under the vast Oregon sky, surrounded by the peace they had fought so hard to find, Colton and Margaret finally claimed the love that had been denied to them for so long. They had faced loss and betrayal, had survived years of separation and heartbreak. But their love had endured. In the months that followed, their small cabin became a haven of happiness. Margaret's laughter returned, bright and joyous, as it had been in their youth. Colton's smile came easier, the hard lines around his eyes softening as he learned to trust in their newfound peace. They were living proof that sometimes love does conquer all, that when two hearts are meant to be together, no amount of time or distance or tragedy can keep them apart forever. And sometimes, on clear mountain nights, when the wind sang through the pines, the neighbors would swear they could hear the sound of laughter, echoing from the little cabin, the joyous sound of two souls who had finally found their way home to each other's arms.